folks. Hope you guys are doing well. So, we had to start with chapter number 5 today, and this is expansion and consolidation of British power in India. Let's start with it. The British Imperial history. The entire imperial history of Britain can be periodized into two phases. The first, empire, stretching across the Atlantic towards America and the West Indies, and the second empire beginning around 1783 Peace of Paris, and swinging towards East Asia and Africa. The imperial history of Britain started with the conquest of Ireland in the 16th century. The English then sprang up as new Romans charged with civilizing so-called backward races throughout the world. For this, the post-Enlightenment intellectuals of the Britain, in particular of Europe in general, started certifying themselves as civilized vis-a-vis the Orient peoples and others. Owing to various spatial and situational forces, the nature of imperial ideology of Britain changed over time, but its fundamentals remained the same. Was the British conquest accidental or intentional? Historians have debated over the fundamental query whether the British conquest of India was accidental or intentional. John Seeley leads the group which says that the British conquest of India was made blindly, unintentionally, and accidentally, and in a fit of absent-mindedness. This school of opinion argues that the British came to trade in India and had no desire to acquire territories or to squander their profits on war waste for territorial expansion. The English, it is argued, were unwillingly drawn to the political turmoil created by the Indians themselves and were almost forced to acquire territories. The other group says that the British came to India with a clear intention of establishing a large and powerful empire, a plan which they completed by working on it bit by bit over the years. They dismissed as propaganda the claim of a peaceful intent and political neutrality of the English East India Company in its early days. Both the schools of opinion appear to be overstating their viewpoints. Initially, perhaps the company officials started acquiring territory just to promote and protect their interests, especially when they saw how factionalized the political situation was. They came to realize how easily they could pit one local ruler against another and began to interfere in local politics, and in the process acquired territories. But later on, the British politicians back in Britain, the administrators sent by them to India, worked on a clear desire and a plan to acquire territories and establish an empire. The enormous profits from the trade in the East, notably India, attracted the English traders, the company, as it did other Europeans. A desire for quick profits, personal ambitions of individuals, plain avarice, and effects of political developments in Europe were some of the factors that made the British increase their political clout in India. At times, they waged wars to protect their commercial interests, and at others, they did so to protect their Indian allies from attacks of potential rivals. B.L. Grover writes, Lord Wellesley resorted to aggressive application of subsidiary alliance system to extend British dominion in India as a defensive countermeasure against the imperialistic designs of France and Russia. From 1798 to 1818, the British motives were concisely imperialistic. Lord Hastings further carried the policy of Wellesley and treated India as a conquered rather than an acquired country. Thereafter, the British seemed to work on set design to conquer the whole of India and even some neighboring states. When did the British period begin in India? In mid-18th century, various historical forces were at work, consequent to which the country moved towards a new direction. Some historians regard the year 1740, when Anglo-French struggle for supremacy in India began in the wake of War of Austrian succession in Europe, as the beginning of the British period. Some see year 1757, when British defeated Nawab of Bengal at Plassey, as the designated date. Still others regard 1761, the year of Third Battle of Panipat, when Marathas were defeated by Ahmad Shah Abdali, as the beginning of this phase of Indian history. However, all such chronological landmarks are somewhat arbitrary because political transformation which began around that time took about 80 years to complete. For instance, as we think of 1761, the British would certainly come to mind because of their viceroy over the Nawab of Bengal at Plassey and over the French. But we would not entirely write off the Marathas and would probably also consider the prospects of Hyder Ali. In fact, it was a period of Indian history which it would probably be a mistake to interpret in terms of what we know in the present. Nonetheless, the circumstances under which the British succeeded are not clear, and few bottlenecks which they faced were not of a serious nature. It is this paradox which makes the causes of British success in establishing an empire in India a matter of considerable interest. Causes of British success in India. The entire process of expansion and consolidation of the British power in India took almost a century. In these 100 odd years, the English used many diplomatic and military tactics, apart from other mechanisms, to finally emerge as the rulers of India. Both war and administrative policies were used by English to impose their power over various kingdoms and finally to consolidate their own rule over entire India. The British were not averse to using unscrupulous tactics to exploit a situation or a regional ruler to get their own way. The causational forces and factors for the success of the British are as follows: superior arms, military, and strategy. The firearms used by the English, which included muskets and cannons, were better than the Indian arms, both in speed of firing and in range. On realizing this, many Indian rulers imported European arms and employed European officers to train their troops. But unfortunately, the Indian military officers and the ranks could never match the English officers and English armies. In the absence of originality, the military officers and armies of Indian rulers became mere imitators. Better military discipline and regular salary. A regular system of payment of salaries and a strict regime of discipline were the means by which English company ensured that the officers and the troops were loyal. On their part, most of the Indian rulers did not have enough money to pay salaries regularly. The Marathas at times diverted their military campaigns to collect revenue so as to pay their troops. Also, the Indian rulers were dependent on personal retinues or a rabble of mercenary elements who were not amiable to discipline and could turn rebellious or join the opponents when going was not good. Civil discipline and fair selection system. The company officers and troops were given charge on the basis of their reliability and skill, and not on heredity or caste or clan ties. They themselves were subject to strict discipline and were aware of the objectives of their campaigns. In contrast, the Indian administrators and military officers were appointed on the basis of caste and personal relations, often disregarding merit and ability. As a result, their competence was doubtful and they often tended to be rebellious and disloyal in order to pursue their own interests. Brilliant leadership and support of second line leaders. Clive, Warren Hastings, Elphinstone, Munro, Marquis of Dalhousie, etc., displayed rare qualities of leadership. The English also had the advantage of long list of secondary leaders like Sir Eyre Coote, Lord Lake, and Arthur Wellesley, who fought not for the leader but for the cause and the glory of their country. The Indian side too had brilliant leaders like Hyder Ali, Tipu Sultan, Chinkilch Khan, Madhurao Rao Scindia, Yashwant Rao Holkar, but they often lacked a term of second line trained personnel. Moreover, the Indian leaders were as much fighting against one another as against the British. The freedom of fighting for a united cause was not their motivation. Thus, they often supported the British against neighboring rulers. The consciousness of India was lacking strong financial backup. This is point number one, two. Third is civil discipline. Fourth is brilliant leadership. And fifth one is strong financial backup. The income of the company was adequate enough to pay its shareholders handsome dividends, as also to finance the English wars in India. Furthermore, England was earning fabulous profits from its trade with the rest of the world. The vast amount of resources in money, materials, and men was available to British in times of need thanks to their superiority in sea power. Nationalist pride. The economically thriving British people, believing in material advancement and proud of their national glory, faced the weak, divided amongst themselves Indians. Bereft of a sense of unified political nationalism, the lack of materialistic vision among Indians was also a reason for the success of the English company. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In the next part, we'll start with British conquest of Bengal. Thank you everyone. All the best for exams. Do share and subscribe to the channel and keep supporting us. Thank you.